clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Davis.
Present.
Councilmember Hagnow.
Present.
Councilmember Kerr.
Here.
Councilmember Parmet.
Hello.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
Councilmember Thisted. And Mayor Riley.
Present.
There are 6 members present.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes, or can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Councilmember Sullivan.
I move to approve the agenda as stated.
Councilmember Davis.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. The agenda is approved. We have no proclamations tonight, and the next item is communications to council. And I'd like to ask anyone who would like to address council to please step up to the podium. State your name, where you live or work in Keystone, or the connection to the town of Keystone, and then you have 3 minutes to voice any comments. And I'd ask the clerk to please give us the timer, as we've started that tradition last meeting.
Hi, Christy Camp.
All right, Christy.
Tip. And just wanted to say again, community is ready for building, and especially toward renewable energy, student-led projects for renewable energy, Keystone Science School, as well as Summit County Public Schools, and also with the composting programs. It's pretty strong. Thank you.
All right. Again, thank you very much, Christy. Are there any other comments? Is there anyone online who would like to speak?
Not that I can see.
All right. And now, since we've experienced this before, last chance. In that case, I will declare the public comment period closed, or communications to council closed. The next item is the consent agenda. And does anyone have any changes to the consent agenda, or can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda if there's no changes? Councilmember Davis.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
All right, is there a second? Councilmember Sullivan.
Sure, a second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is carried unanimously. The consent agenda, as listed in the meeting packet, has been approved. The next item is the second reading of the town ordinance, and I would ask the clerk to please introduce the ordinance.
Ordinance 2025-0-02, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Keystone, Colorado, adopting regulations for emergency and local disaster authority.
All right. And tonight, we're going to be going, first I'll declare the public hearing open. And here are the procedures that we will be going through for the public hearing. And at this council meeting, we'll be considering ordinance 2025-0-2 regarding adopting the regulations for emergency and local disaster authority. The council will listen to all of your comments and consider them in our deliberations, which will occur later. And the following are the procedures for the hearing. First, we're going to hear a report from the town manager. Then we will take public comment on the ordinance. And that public comment is going to be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. And I'd ask you either to raise your hand if you're online, or line up before the podium when it's your turn to speak. Please say your name and where you live in the town or work in Keystone, or your connection to the town. I'll also recognize the remote attendees, and ask them to speak, and neither the council nor the manager will answer questions or respond to your comments during the hearing, although we will consider them in the deliberations. And following the public comment period, the public hearing will be closed, and then we'll proceed with deliberations. Is there anyone who would like to make a public comment on this ordinance?
Staff.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, thank you. Rescind that last comment. I was trying to move us on. Would the staff please make your presentation?
Okay, and I will allow our town attorney, Jennifer Matson, to give this report.
Good evening, council. Jennifer Matson. So this ordinance has been before council a couple of times. It was discussed at the work session, and then council approved it last meeting on the consent agenda for first reading. We had at the work session agenda, we had somebody here from your Summit County EMS and Fire talking about fire risks, mitigating fire risks in the community. This ordinance is intended to help and respond to those types of emergencies. If you do have a fire situation in town, other emergency, this ordinance will help in terms of providing tools to respond quickly to similar disasters and emergencies within the municipality. The ordinance defines the roles and authorities to act during emergencies, streamlines decision-making, so one person is permitted to act and has flexibility to make quick decisions in these types of emergencies, ensures that resources are allocated efficiently to mitigate harm and restore the normal state, and also it aligns with the local emergency powers under state law and federal laws. The ordinance in the packet, the staff report goes over the overview of the ordinance. I won't do that here tonight since you've all gone through it before. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Is there any questions for staff? All right, hearing none, I will now open the floor for public comment. Again, the same guidelines. Raise your hand if you're online or line up behind the podium.
Christy Camp from Ski Tip. I'm curious if there is community involvement in this ordinance. I don't know if that's not this level, but the Wildfire Resiliency Code for the state has a community involvement adaptation or welcoming for mitigation, especially regarding students, for green spaces and playgrounds. I could just put that question out there that maybe community could be involved with mitigation.
Well, thank you very much, Kristen. I'll ask staff, that's my question to staff, which I'm allowed to do, to address that last question.
So this ordinance is really intended to be a response tool in the event of an emergency. So when an emergency does occur, it allows the community to act quickly. So instead of coming to requiring decisions to be made by town council, the manager is authorized to quickly act and, get tools in place, people here to help with emergencies. So it's not really in front of the emergency, it's during the emergency.
All right. In the public hearing, since there's no more comment, and I should have closed the public hearing before I asked the question of staff. But the public hearing is now closed, and we enter into a period of deliberations. And does the council have any questions of staff? Councilmember Sullivan.
Just help me recall when the charter was written, we talked about emergency declarations, et cetera. Is this in sync with the things that we talked about in the charter? You know, follow-on meetings, as quickly as you can have a meeting, all those kind of things?
Yes, so there is, in this ordinance, there are provisions requiring reports to council after actions are taken. There is the follow-up after the manager conducts activities, the manager is required to report, and then meetings are to occur when they, so it doesn't, there's an end date to the emergency.
Okay. So no conflicts though, we looked at.
Correct.
To the charter versus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? No questions? Can I have a motion? Councilmember Davis.
I move to approve ordinance 2025-0-02, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Keystone, Colorado, adopting regulations for emergency and local disaster authority.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or debate on the subject? Hearing none, I will call the question. And since this is an ordinance, we need to have a roll call vote. So I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Davis.
Approved.
Councilmember Hagenow.
Approved.
Councilmember Kerr.
Approved.
Councilmember Parmet.
Yes.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Approved.
Mayor Riley.
Approved.
There are 6 votes to approve.
All right. Thank you very much. The next item is the first reading of ordinance 2025-0-04, an ordinance of the Town Council of Keystone regarding the licensing of businesses. With that, I will turn it over for discussion by the town manager.
Okay, first of all, we have two Scrivener's errors here. The first Scrivener's error is the second section 5, and the remaining sections after that, which should, the second section 5 should be section 6, and the remaining sections therefore adjusted. And the second section 5G should be special events as licensed by the town of Keystone, and not the town of Grand Lake. We don't have to worry about them. So just get those two things on the board to start out with, and I'll go back to the beginning here. And this is the business licenses we talked about in our previous workshop. The ordinance expands it a bit to comply with state law. There are several businesses that under state law are not required to have local business licenses. Those are called out in this under exemptions, and the few other exemptions that are called out are minor operated businesses that operate for, I believe it's 84 days or less a year. I could look that up quickly. Yes, 84 days in any calendar year. We're not going to make your neighbor kid who mows your yard or operates a lemonade stand get a business license under this draft of the ordinance. We'll go over the ordinance in a bit more detail, but those are the three big changes. We've limited it to just 2 types of license. An annual business license, whether you're fixed premise or remote location, and then a peddler, solicitor, transient vendor license. So 2 forms of licenses. During the workshop, we discussed fees, and the council asked me to come back with what our surrounding communities charge. And generally, it's between $50 and $75 for a general annual business license, and only one town, Frisco, in our county has the peddler solicitor permit, and that was $25 a day, not to exceed, $75 in Frisco. Breckenridge has very complicated charges that tend to be very expensive. So that's why I kind of left their column blank. So in the ordinance, I have that the fees will be set by resolution of the town, so that we can easily adjust those. I guess even before we get to it, my original thought was 50 and 25. Is that?
Councilmember Kerr?
So one of my questions last time was noting that some of the towns had recently pushed them up. Was there something that they could share with us as to why that was?
Just ability to bring in a little more revenue, administrative cost, although I think 50 more than covers the administrative cost for us.
Considering our purpose is just
Yeah.
to know who's in town
Yep,
and ensure about coding and zoning,
yeah,
it's not a lot of work on our behalf.
no.
Sorry to speak for you, Maddie, I don't need to do that. Thank you.
But there is going to have to be a system set up, probably some software changes set up to implement all of this as well. Councilmember Hagan.
I think that the cost of the licenses was a big sticking point for me last time, but I think that 25 and 50 is a pretty reasonable amount. I do have the question to pose as I read this list of exceptions. The thought came to mind: are we able to? One of the biggest sticking points I see for the festivals that we have in town and the vendors that come with those is, in my mind, if we add this additional fee, it could reduce the desire for festivals to occur here, vendors to come here, the popularity of them. So that's just in my mind. Is there a way that we can do a business license for an overarching organization that maybe puts on the festival? Could we make those exempt if they are part of X festival? Is there a way to meet the objectives of the business licensing without being overly, like an overreach of government, right, and requiring all these extra things?
So the other communities that don't have the peddler solicitor license require the peddlers and solicitors to get their general license.
So with Breckenridge, for example, right, you go for Oktoberfest and the sausage seller needs to get a full business license.
Yeah, and the reason for that is so that, and the reason it wouldn't work to have an overarching license is so that we can check and make sure that the vendors who are selling their products in our town are paying
Sales tax.
the sales tax.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Permit.
I'm reading the list of exceptions, and one of them is hospitals. So the question is the emergency and urgent care center going to meet that definition?
It probably should. I should expand that in our second reading to hospitals and,
Healthcare centers?
yeah.
Okay. I had the same question, but persons exempt under federal or Colorado law, wouldn't that wrap them in there already?
It should, but since we called out hospitals, it's probably best
Sure.
to.
Is that the mushroom thing?
No.
Is that a business?
There will be a business, but it should, I will see how this,
So you're thinking,
it should be exempt. We'll see
It's
what
not a
the state law.
nonprofit.
But it is a medical facility, so
so yes or no?
I will look up what the state is, but I assume, and this is strictly an assumption, that they're exempt from sales tax as medical facilities. kind of
Use
like
the same
medical,
Language.
yeah, like medical marijuana is exempt from the sales taxes, similar to that.
But if they're selling other products or services aren't taxable, but other products,
Yep.
those other products would be taxable.
So I'll match state law on what they, exactly how they.
I'd like to also see a cap on the amount that the vendors at events have to pay. It probably ought to be the same as the business license.
The annual license,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can't, we can't expect them to pay more than that license.
Right, they show up multiple times.
Yeah.
John, are you gonna go through it, or you want to just cover your questions?
Well, we can go through it very quickly, and I guess pop up questions if you have them. So, everything is pretty standard language that you'll find in any business license resolution. One addition, like I mentioned earlier, is the minor operated businesses. Two forms of licenses, even though they're not so common here in the Summit County, are fairly common everywhere, and even the state has a separate vendor peddler sales tax license as opposed to their annual sales tax license.
Under the minor operated business, I was happy to see you did actually identify a period of time, because there are some folks who have serious businesses and they're under the age of 18. And I hate to have people go for the easy answer, and it would be, I can see it being repeated, oh, if you're under 18, you don't need to be licensed. I wonder if it's appropriate to say minor operated short-term business. I think it might be clearer, or something of that sort. But it's an important distinction. You can have a full-blown business at 17, and people do. But we're exempting, I'm not sure which is the word, minor operated businesses that operate for no more than 84 days. I think that's reasonable, and I just ask you to add that to the headline,
Okay, no problem.
whatever word you think are right. And
Go ahead.
this is sort of a general, and I've read it 3 times. If I missed it, I really apologize. Do we require a business to be licensed in Colorado in order to be licensed here?
No.
Okay.
Because there's no requirement for every business to be licensed in
No,
Colorado.
we got it. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Exemptions, are there any other questions about exemptions?
Yes, so entertainment for which no fee is charged. A lot of the entertainment that occurs specifically in and around the base area is free to view, but I have to presume that they're getting paid by the resort or by some other entity. Would they be required to have, would the artist be required to have a business license to receive that funding?
Well, yeah, because they are charging a fee.
So,
It happens to be one single fee to the resort, but.
gotcha, so it's if I were to open my guitar case and start strumming away, then I wouldn't need a business license, but if I'm gonna make a profit off it, whether it comes from ticket sales or one individual person that pays, okay.
I question that, and the reason is that particular business isn't profiting off the sales. It is that business is providing a service which is not a taxable item. So I would question whether the player would be required to have the business license. However, the event organizer may very well be required to have a business license.
That's a good point. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, the perfect example is like, the goat has to have a business license. we're not going to require every band
Yeah.
that they book to have a business license,
Right.
right?
And that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah,
Because the band does not charge you tickets once you're
It
in.
doesn't, yeah, it really, the issue is the band is someone that's been hired, and that service is not a taxable function.
yeah, that service is covered by, any money made off that band is made by the organization. I will make sure to clarify that.
Thank you.
Yeah, but in fact, I think through the process all the way, even if the band was sponsoring the event and selling tickets for the service, that still would require a business license.
Yeah.
If they were selling T-shirts, that would require a business license. Councilmember Kerr.
Well-run definitions. So the business says any profession, occupation, or activity that's going to be for monetary gain. So the devil's in the details. And I want to know, are all the people who do remote work out here for a company that's in another jurisdiction, maybe people who do contract work, people who sell on Etsy, I don't remember the name, Posh, I guess, if you sell your used clothing, sorry. If you're writing a book for publication, but it's not published yet in New York. If you're creating, I mean, I can see, if you're painting, if you're doing painting or creating a photo collection that you intend to sell somewhere else, I'm not sure where we're drawing the lines. But my major concern is we do have a lot of people, I hope, who are working remotely up here.
Can I ask the town attorney to address that, and that may apply to the state limitations on that, the caveats for the state limitations?
Yeah, so, the state statute put in, or the state legislature put in a statute in place a couple of years ago related to remote businesses. So it was really intended to address companies like Amazon, who don't have a presence in the town. And those companies cannot be required to get a business license in municipalities. So that, I think, would address that question, because those entities don't have a physical presence in the town, even though they're engaging in business in the town and they're selling things in the town. An individual who sells goods maybe on Etsy, who has a business here, a home-based business, that person may be required to get a business license.
Okay, so I got that. And I looked at that language about, big companies who FedEx in, or, they send it in. But I'm thinking almost the opposite. Say I'm an attorney and I work remotely for a corporation in Illinois.
Well, if you have a home-based business, which I think that is a home-based business.
But if they're an employee of that company, then.
Right, I mean, then you have, the question is, and I wasn't asked to look at this particular ordinance, so I don't know what is laid out in this ordinance as far as what is required or not.
Okay.
So if I may, it's an employee of someone working for a Chicago law firm, being paid by the Chicago law firm for work and services being provided somewhere else, or only incidentally here.
Paying a lot of taxes to Chicago.
Well, that's where they're, and in the service generally, there are not a lot of taxes paid. So those types of things would not require a business license. However, if you have a specific office, if you have, we'll talk about the Etsy seller, if they are keeping their materials here, selling them online, even though they're going to a different place, they have a physical presence and they do need a license. And that's because the town's concern at that point is the life and health safety issues of the actual physical business building. So it's really, as the state defines it, you have to have a physical presence. And that means either you're doing a not insignificant amount of work or services in the town, or you have a physical location that is operating as a building, store, office, sales, even warehouse within the jurisdiction.
So we do have artists in town. Yeah, that's a business then.
Unless they don't sell
Yeah, it depends on,
I'm just asking, really.
Can we create an exception that allows for creative entities to function without a license unless they are selling items within the town limits?
That's tough.
Madam Attorney, what do other towns do in covering these questions? How do they handle it?
Well, so, I mean, most of them are, businesses that operate, that do engage in sales, perform services for a fee. So that's really typically how it works. So an artist is going to, if they're engaging in sales, they're selling their work, they would need to get a license, a business license. A band who performs in town probably also, if they perform for a fee, maybe would need to get a business license because they're a business.
What's a product versus service?
Well, it's not, it isn't a sales tax question.
Oh, I see, yeah, right, sorry.
it. Continue along those lines, it's not, say again.
It's not a sales tax question. So the businesses that are required to get business licenses, it doesn't matter if they're selling goods or providing a service, both would need to get a license. So sales taxes for goods, selling goods, no sales tax on services, but business licenses are different.
Let me give you a hypothetical. The town has hired Widener Duran as our town attorney. Will Widener Duran be required to get a business license in the town of Keystone?
No.
Why?
Well, because we don't have a physical presence in the town of Keystone.
But
Our physical presence is in the city of Centennial, and we have a business license with the city of Centennial.
But we're requiring a business license for people who don't have a physical presence in the town but do business in the town.
And if they do incidental, provide incidental, have an incidental connection, then they don't need a license.
Yeah, a lot of those businesses in our case is more than incidental because they have major repairs and major work that they're doing.
Right.
So you consider Widener Duran's work in Keystone incidental.
and the language, the language in the ordinance is straight out of the state statute on that. And there's a fuzzy line between what's incidental physical presence and regular physical presence.
Councilmember Format.
Yeah, I think I just keep jumping back to the whole band example where they don't have any physical presence, no basis here. It's a couple people living in houses wherever, and they're offered to do a show here and they're offered to do a show in another town on the same night. They're like, well, I've got to fill out this paperwork and pay $50. I'm going to go do the other.
See, I would argue that band falls into the same category as our attorney.
Yeah.
That's really incidental work and the town doesn't require a business license.
It's not regularly scheduled. However, if you're swing crew, who used to, they're all probably dead, but used to perform up at Last Lift Bar 5 nights a week all winter long. were regularly scheduled, had a physical presence, and that's kind of where that fuzzy line.
But they don't own the venue. They don't have a physical presence. They're simply contracted to
Just like
go and play now and then. Like, so how often does a band have to play before they're considered regular?
Well, that's
One show a month, one show a week?
That's a fuzzy line. It's kind of like a general contractor who comes into town who we want to have business licenses because we're trying to protect our people from scams.
Yeah, and I guess really what we're talking about is the gray areas in state law in this case, which means discretion you trust to the town manager to walk through with discretion, and if we start getting complaints in that area, we deal with it.
That makes sense. Protect us from bad contractors. I don't know if we need protection from bad music.
But if we try to define this more, we risk going afoul of this thing.
Is there, and correct me here, please forgive me that I don't know exactly, but is there a spot in here that calls out the town manager who can work through the fuzzy line? Like, and not literally those words, but.
So here's what's really gonna happen. If there's any question, nobody's gonna say, oh, should I pay for a license? They're just not gonna know unless their neighbor tells on them.
Okay, and then I have a second question. The food service delivery apps or anything like that, does that fall into the insignificant amount?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And actually, those are types of businesses that the state statute was generally aimed at. Okay, so.
Other questions? Let me walk through, I think most of my earlier ones have been addressed. When you talk about implementation date, in here you talk about a license is renewable in June, and if a license is bought in the year prior to that current prior year, they have to renew in June. In the case of short-term rentals, if you purchased a short-term rental license, then it's good through the next renewal period until the following year.
Which is what I tried to make that language say. So if I purchase it on July 1st,
Right?
it's valid till the following June.
But if you purchased it
That's
on
less.
June 1st,
It expires June 30th.
but that's not what we do for short-term rentals. For
We-
short-term rentals, if you purchase it on July, if you have your short-term rental and you purchase it on September 15th, it's not due until the following, till a year, till 18 months
Plus.
later. Yes,
Okay.
till the following October.
Ooh, I guess I didn't realize that on our short-term
I believe-
rentals, but.
Madam Clerk,
Yeah.
isn't that the way it works?
It is, except it's that period between September and December, so it resets at January 1.
Right.
It'll be the following year. But anything that's after that renewal period between September and December would still be at the next renewal period.
Between September and December, right, but after December,
Correct.
it's, yeah, so if you bought a license on January 1st, it would really be good through the renewal period of September till the next January.
I feel like this is a reading test. Did you not write in here that it's prorated? If you come in the middle of the year,
Oh, I
if you start your business in December, I might have read that on one of the previous versions, which kind of,
I mean,
eradicates the
just check
problem.
and see, I'm not, I don't recall.
darn it, I don't have it memorized yet.
Yep, no,
I don't remember the prorated at all.
yeah.
I would have jumped at that.
I would said no.
No, it's not. So explain to me, what's the longest period that a short-term rental licensee can go without paying for a short-term rental license?
So if you got it in January currently, it would be active until September of 2026.
So, wow, so almost 2 years.
sell
In
it,
January.
do we want to consider
January.
prorated fees? If you come in August, you pay 10 months of,
Well, then pretty much every, first of all, it's a pretty minimal fee.
Yeah.
it is.
And if we prorated fees, it would cost more than $50 because if they're off by a day, we need to sit down and do the math of what they owe for their license.
Yeah, we want to eat staff time.
Yeah,
The way it's written right now, it's once a year, same date.
Yeah.
It's not aligned with short-term
Well,
rentals.
that's
Yeah.
the point I was.
Yeah, what?
I think the bottom line is that's what other towns do, so
Yeah.
we're not out of line.
So as long as we don't care whether it's aligned with short-term rentals or not, I'm happy with the way it is.
and the renewal date, I picked June 30th because you don't want to do January 1st because most businesses are up to here with business at that point, and I didn't want to do fall because Maddie will be busy enough with short-term rentals come fall, so.
I'm confused, I thought that short-term rentals were exempt from this.
They are.
No, I just said, we have a license for short-term rentals. It is, we're going to follow the same policy for renewals we have for that license and this license.
But we're,
Our suggestion is no.
no.
Yeah,
Run-
right.
Go with
June 30th,
Yeah.
it's good to the next June 30th. If you came in on
Too bad.
June 1st, you should have planned better.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, you're at $50.
Yes, okay.
So, under this, the clerk will set up the administration, forms and such, and the clerk will be able to deny licenses that don't correctly fill the form or are not allowed in town for whatever reason. That appeal can come to the town manager and that's it. And if they don't like me, they can always take us to court.
Am I correct that in that process, in that review process that the clerk will go through, if the clerk determines they really don't need a short-term, a business license, that the clerk would reject it with the notification they don't need a business
They don't need a
license?
business license, exactly.
That way you get some consistency as you look at it. Do we need an effective date for all businesses to have a license? And what I'm thinking about is, if 30 June is our date, do we want to make that the effective date that they have to have a license, and therefore not penalize anyone who comes in and gets a license between now and the June 30th, to have to get another license on June 30th?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So I recommend an effective date. Those are all mine. What other questions? Do you have the guidance you need?
I do. Do we want to approve a first reading, the clear up language of hospitals, add short-term to the minor operated business definition, effective date, and we talked about entertainment, but that should fall under the incidental physical presence section.
Is that acceptable to everybody?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to approve the ordinance at the first reading with the changes that staff has received from us today? And I won't go over the specific changes that we would have to do that if this was a second reading. Is that acceptable to the attorney? All right. Then can I have a motion? Councilmember Davis.
I move to approve. I move to approve on the first reading ordinance 2025-0-4 regarding the licensing of businesses as amended.
All right. It's been moved. Do I have a second? Same.
Sure,
A second.
I like to move it around. Councilmember Sullivan.
Yes, a second?
So moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the motion. I'll call a roll call vote. And I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Hagenow.
Yes.
Councilmember Kerr.
Approve.
Councilmember Parmet.
Yes.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Approve.
Councilmember Davis.
Approve.
Mayor Riley.
Approved.
There are 6 votes to approve.
The first reading has been approved. The next item is Resolution 2025-07, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Keystone, Colorado, approving a supplemental budget appropriation for the Town of Keystone, Colorado for the calendar year 2025. Because this is a appropriation issue, according to our charter, we're required to also have a public hearing associated with this as well, which is a little different than we're used to, but we'll follow the same process that we do for public hearings, if that's acceptable. So at this point, I will open the public hearing is open. I've already gone through the procedures that we handle for public hearings, so I won't repeat those at this time. And I'll ask for an introductory presentation by the town manager.
Okay, so at our last meeting, we approved a down payment assistance program. We've had one qualifying employee request access to this program. There was concern when we passed the down payment assistance program that the program might get out of hand, so the solution would be not budget for it, but supplemental budget anytime someone came in with a request. And this is our first request for a supplemental budget to allow a qualifying employee to access the down payment assistance program. And I will let our town financial director, Heike Fox, discuss the supplemental budget.
Good evening, council members. Heike Fox, Finance Director. So John said at the last meeting, council approved a resolution for a down payment assistance program for town employees. We do have a qualifying employee who has requested assistance under this program and has met all the eligible criteria. Given the current budget allocations, additional funding is required to fulfill this request, which also complies with Colorado Revised Statute 29-1-10210. So the funding adjustment request is for $100,000 for the down payment assistance. Basically, this would, the budget impact for the Workforce Housing Fund would increase the workforce housing operating expenses by $100,000. What was previously appropriated was $208,929, so that'll increase it to $308,929. No changes in the workforce housing capital outlay, in the total workforce housing fund adjustment went from $808,929 to $908,929.
Does anyone have any questions for Councilmember Haganah?
Thank you. Please forgive me for my ignorance on this topic, but are we allowed to use workforce housing funds for an item like this? And then the second part to that, does it matter on where the employee's residence is that is impacted by this, if it's in the town of Keystone or not?
Under our down payment assistance program, the residence has to be within Summit County. And workforce housing money can be used for this program.
Okay, so I mean, we approved that down payment assistance, but is there any legal obligation outside of our town ordinances that would require it to be inside the town?
No.
Okay. And then would this unit count when, I forget the exact proposition number, but we were talking about needing X number of units by X date to receive, would be eligible to receive money in grants from the state. Would this unit count towards that?
No, this would not.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions? Hearing no other questions or comments, can I have a motion, please?
Oh, we have to.
Public
Oh,
hearing.
I'm sorry. All right. I'll now open the floor to public comment. And again, the same rules that applied to, that we discussed earlier apply. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this issue? Is there anyone online who would like to speak to this issue? Hearing none, then I will declare the public comment period closed. And similarly, I will close the public hearing, and now we'll enter deliberations on this ordinance. Are there any comments or discussion?
I think I've kind of had this opinion for most of the down payment assistance program conversations. I love the idea of the program, but it sits uneasy with me, the way in which we're going about this and we're funding it. For me, without information on the process, workforce housing, right, has a very different application in my mind, right? It is, in its holistic meaning, to support and develop workforce housing for our town. And while our employees are a really big aspect of our town and a really big reason for our success, it seems like a little bit of a bait and switch almost. And that's a very strong word, I know that, or a very strong saying, and I know that. But I don't know if everyone in the town would agree with the use of workforce housing dollars to fund what is an employee retention program, in my opinion.
Any other comments? Then can I have a motion? Councilmember Davis?
I move to adopt Resolution 2025-7, a resolution for supplemental budget and appropriation for the town of Keystone, Colorado for calendar year 2025.
Is there a second? Is there a second? I need a second on this motion.
I will second.
All right, thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any debate or discussion? My only discussion on this is I recognize most other towns in Summit County have programs similar to this that funded it exactly the same way. The ballot language that would in supporting workforce housing allows for this in the ballot and the language intent for it. So I'm very comfortable with this program as long as the person is living in Summit County and is a town employee. So, Councilman Permet.
I recognize Councilmember Hagenau's concern, and I do see his point. I guess the balance that I see is that this isn't a sunk cost, it is a loan, and we will get the money paid back to us. And that puts it in a little bit different of a category in my mind. And then I fall to what Mr. Mayor just said, which is it's allowable, it's technically allowable, it's what all the other communities are doing. So I'll support it.
Councilmember Davis.
I would like to add that I think anything that we can do to maintain our valuable town employees, I will support.
Any other comments? Councilmember Kerr.
I guess I'd just add that we did discuss this in executive session. We can't talk about what happened, but it was a extended discussion, especially about setting precedents and the costs. But at that point, we determined we would give this program a shot, as Councilmember Davis just noted, on behalf of our very small leap workforce. So I'm going to accept it.
Are there any other comments or discussion? In that case, I will call for a vote, and again, because of the nature of the issue, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Can the clerk please read the roll?
Councilmember Kerr.
Approved.
Councilmember Formet.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Approved.
Councilmember Davis.
Approved.
Councilmember Hagenow.
Approved.
Mayor Riley.
Approved.
There are 6 votes to approve.
All right, thank you. The next item on the agenda is report of the town manager and the staff, and I'll turn it over to the town manager.
Okay, so start out on February 25th. We're having the comp plan consultants up, and they're driving around town with some of the staff, and I know some of the council will be invited, if you haven't already, just to do a site visit and drive around the town, so.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The comp plan consultants are coming up February 25th to do their site plan visit. That's also the date of our next meeting. They're coming first thing in the morning. They'll just be driving around town with staff, and I believe Lindsay's going to reach out to a couple of council members to see if you can come along too.
I'd like to add, if any council member would like to attend, let the town manager know.
Please do
You have like a
so.
band or something?
What?
You can have like a band.
We'll figure out something, so we're all together, yep. Let me see, IMTPR, CDOT and the Transportation Commission have officially put the kibosh on splitting the Intermountain Transportation Planning region.
It took a long time to go nowhere.
Took a long time to go nowhere.
Didn't I just see something from CML that is being rejuvenated by CDOT with the state legislature?
I did not see that, so that would be, to go to the state legislature would be an expansion to 16 TPRs.
Well, it just talked about splitting this one, addressing the Intermountain issue.
Well, the state legislature requires 15
Right.
TPRs. So allowing us to split would create 16,
Yes.
so that's against state law. The only thing the state legislature could do would be allow 16,
Right.
which defeats the purpose. The idea of splitting is we have so many more road miles traveled than any other of these.
I understand, but I
Yeah.
understand that there's been a bill introduced to do just that.
Okay, but that wouldn't necessarily have support of the IMTPR board.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The state legislature can change state law.
Oh, they can, and if they do, we will split,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen that law, I haven't received an email.
I just saw that, but I read the
Yeah.
weekly CML.
But
legislature.
I don't know if the IMTPR board would support that because it just dilutes the funding anyways. So, although we'd be a little better off, but our idea is we each need to truly equalize. The road mileage should be equal in the TPRs, and it's not. And that's the problem, not so much that we don't have the allowance for 16.
Or another way to look at it is, all the funds are distributed equally among the 15 districts, whereas we have all that extra.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And I don't know what was included in that. It was just, they're addressing I think it was a membership in the number of IMTRs or the Intermountain IMTRs being addressed.
Okay, I haven't caught that at all, but as far as.
Can I just share really quick, because I'm just Googling,
Yeah.
and I found it, and it was introduced in January, and it hasn't gone anywhere.
It hadn't gone anywhere, but it was introduced.
Yeah, so it's a 2-page bill, it's super short.
Yeah, I can't,
Yeah. But I just
I'm a
wanted-
bit shocked that we didn't hear about it through the IMTPR, but it is what it is.
But that was pushed, as I remember, at the behest of CDOT.
They're trying to split the baby. Let me see, and maybe the mayor will go into this a little bit more, but at the mayor's, managers, and commissioners meetings, we had a discussion about the PUC is going to be making decisions about how to address end of pipelines for natural gas. We're still trying to figure out exactly where our pipeline feeds off of. We're on top of that, reaching out to Excel, but my understanding is Keystone is not served by the same pipeline that comes through Grant County and then serves Breckenridge, which is having all the problems. The various towns have talked about it. An intervention could cost up to $180,000 in legal fees. And there's discussion about contributing towards that. We need to find out exactly where we sit in the situation, which I'll have that information by the next meeting.
And if a decision isn't made to intervene by the 16th of February, it's too late.
Yep.
Could you reshare what the intervention would entail and what the purpose of that would be?
It's quite confusing, and it's Excel's, the pipeline that ends in Breckenridge often does not have adequate natural gas pressure, so much so that they put in a injection station, or a couple injection stations for liquefied natural gas to offset the natural gas in the pipelines. On days when the pressure is exceedingly low, Excel has some recommendations on how they're going to address that without building a new pipeline. There are serious questions about Excel's commitment and whether Excel says electrification, but then the plan doesn't come up with the money needed to switch over, the incentives to actually make electrification affordable for existing situations. We're still trying to get the final details, and I will be emailing those out as soon as we get them. Breckenridge is taking the lead on this.
So is an intervention a act that the communities affected by this would take to compel Excel to do more?
No, it would be to tell the PUC do not adopt the plan Excel is putting forth for the solution.
And that would be almost $200,000.
Because the companies, they would hire professionals who do this and professionals who do the testimony, so you'd be paying them to do all the research that was needed to support the public testimony before the PUC against the Excel plan. So, and the cost, they estimated somewhere between $90,000 and $180,000.
So for simple terms, we'd be paying potentially for lobbying efforts to not do the plan that Excel has.
Correct. And even if we're not on the Breckenridge pipeline, it might be in our interest to intervene on this situation because we had pressure problems up here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And the other issue that the managers have to work out is if they are looking for participation, then what's the cost of the participation? How do you allocate those costs among the municipalities and the county? Is it on an equal basis? Is it on a population basis? How do you do all that? And I frankly, right now, I'm very skeptical that they're going to get their act together between now and
February 16th.
this weekend
Yeah.
to pull all that together. So, Councilmember Cormier.
I guess that was my question, is what are the other municipalities doing as far as, are they certainly going to?
No, it's still up in the air. One situation that I could see is very likely, and I don't like to speak for you, and I certainly don't want to speak for the Breck Council, but I could see Breck going forward with this and still trying to get the remaining communities on
Maybe
board.
potentially Rick could go with the county
Yeah.
on this to try to do it, but I think it's going to be difficult for them to get Silverthorne, Dillon, Frisco, and Blue River all lined up and if everyone agreed to the cost shares and the rest. It's going to be, I think at this point it's problematic.
Yeah.
I think everyone recognizes the problem, you'd kind of like something to change, but the objectives of our various communities may actually be a little divergent in what you'd like to see the outcome. Once we understand fully what this is intended to accomplish.
I can just say, my recollection of when we had the service interruption, there was a pressurization station on that main line out of Grand County that comes over you past. That station exploded and dropped the line pressures. And in order to limit natural gas consumption, Xcel cut electricity to us and everyone else. Why? Because you need electricity to run your gas boiler systems. So we lost electricity in order to maintain some minimum gas line pressures. I don't know if that means we're on the same line, but it sure sounds like it.
Well, one of the issues, I think the issue that Breck's concerned with is they have a temporary injection station located in Breckenridge. And there are different requirements, land use requirements or regulatory requirements for how a temporary station goes in and a full-fledged station goes in, tremendously different requirements. Xcel has come in and asked them to make this a permanent station. They don't want to do that. And that's part of the whole challenge that they're dealing with on their end, because all the propane tanks and the injection station is located in their community. And I think this is different from the issue you're addressing.
Gotcha.
There simply isn't, to support the demand along that pipeline at the peak days, there is not, without an injection station, sufficient pressure to support the natural gas pulls.
Thank you for clarifying.
So we'll keep you in touch as this evolves. But at this point, there's no ask or anything, just information. Please had a real good first meeting with Cale last week after well, technically even before he became our chief. And maybe it was a day or two after. Yeah, the 4th was Tuesday, so it was after he became our chief at our first meeting. They are hiring already, and I've already seen Dillon police cars out on Highway 6.
I saw my first police car last week out on Highway 6 just as you entered the town. I don't know if they were ticketing, but they were certainly present as you entered Keystone from Dillon.
Could I ask in regards to that as a council and as an organization we get together, and I know when Chief Osborne first came here, he asked for what our view on policing is, right? And a few of us gave rough answers, but I would love for us to give, not like a mission statement, but almost like a mission statement on this is what we view our town police to be. The reason for that is I'm concerned about the funding mechanism that is viewed as the police department in certain towns, and I don't want Keystone to become or still have that same mentality that the police is a funding mechanism. And I would like for all of us to get aligned on what our objectives are with the police department.
Yeah, well, two things. I think that's a great idea, and we did make it abundantly clear in the IGA negotiations and stuff, but I think it should be a matter of policy too, that the town of Keystone's position is the police department is there to get people to comply with the law. Funding comes out of our general fund. It does not come out of the ticket numbers, the tickets at the police write or anything. We made it very clear that we do not see the police department as a funding source for us, but I do agree we should make that a very clear public policy.
Kind of a sense of the towns.
And I'd recommend we bring Chief Osborne back in front of the council, probably in April, let him get through the month of March. Spring break can be a pretty busy time for our local police departments, if that's okay.
I think we've also made it very, or you've made it very clear to the town of Dillon that any fine revenue that comes out of the police department does not go back any fine revenue raised from Keystone, enforcement of Keystone ordinances does not go back to the police department. That comes to the town, and we can determine how we allocate those monies. It basically comes back to the general fund, and we have allocation for it.
No incentives for actual police.
No incentives to get out there and write tickets other than that's their job.
If Dylan wants to pay them an incentive, a separate incentive to go write tickets in the town of Dillon, they can very well do that. We're just not going to do that here.
Yeah.
And my concern is it's very hard to switch the mentality, right? So if your mentality is write tickets, get reward, write ticket, get reward, they cross a certain boundary in US 6, it's not all of a sudden going to change that mentality. And so that's why I'd like to have a public, very prominent position on that.
I agree 100%.
Anything else?
Yeah, our meetings, we'll have a report for you at our next meeting. Good God, that's a complicated issue. I can't believe how complicated it was to find out, well, we know who's been taking care of the meetings, but why?
Yeah.
And we have even like gone down to this County Historical Society and flipped through books from the 80s, trying to find the answer. But we'll have a detailed report on where we are with our town meeting maintenance at our
And
next
we'll have a
meeting.
discussion with Shannon tomorrow on that subject. An additional complication factor is right now Vail maintains 6 medians. 3 of them are in the town of Keystone, 3 of them are in Summit County.
Going on, Public Works webpage, we're working on getting that up and going, drafting all the content, and should be up within the next month. So, I want to give a shout out to Heike, actually, for her dealing with our large property management companies here. We had to work out some sticky details on how they would report their taxes for their people and their obligations, and it took some work, but Heike got it done, and our big property management companies are very happy with not only the solution, but they're incredibly happy with the response they got from Heike when they brought up some of these issues. So big shout out, Heike.
It was a staff solution based.
Most of you were at the CAST meeting a couple weeks ago. It was a good meeting. I felt some good sessions, some sessions that really didn't matter too much to us, but some really good sessions and some really good discussion with people from towns similar to ours or that might be experiencing issues that pop up in our town, like Park City. So, the open house is scheduled for the 21st at 2 p.m. right here. We will be pushing that out every way possible, 2 to 4 in the afternoon, just some birthday cake and snacks and non-alcoholic beverages. People come in and we'll have all of Maddie's various year-end reports printed up on papers hung around so we can talk to the people and point at what we've accomplished. Just prior to that.
Can I just mention before, I got the town first annual report today, the email. You did awesome work. And I want to thank you. You really captured a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and yet we want everyone to know. Thank you very much.
I want to echo that because that was on my portion when we came to the following agenda item, but that was well written.
Just prior to that, the Mayor Pro Tem, the Mayor and I will be meeting with some members of the KNC board and some upper management, including Shannon Bueller. Just kind of a planning session for the town KNC and Vail Resorts for the short term coming year. Find out what their plans are and they can find out what our plans are. We've already talked about the CAST March 6 meeting, got that covered. John Stabney responded to me, and he will be able to do our retreat on, was it April 17th, I think was the day we picked. And our next meeting is February 25th.
Anything else?
And that's it for me.
Report of mayor and council, fellow council members? Councilmember Hagan.
Thank you. So a few of us were at the Coffee with Council, and Carol, please fill in anything that I missed, or Councilwoman Kerr, please fill in anything I missed. Councilmember Thisted, myself, and Councilwoman Kerr were all there. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Davis, Councilwoman Thisted, and myself were all there. And we had some returning constituents and then some new folks as well were there. Some of the items that were brought up was a big talk on fire mitigation and potential insurance issues that could arise from that. So the conversation today with our local fire district was really important for that, and we got some good information. A gentleman and some representatives from Antlers Gulch Road were talking about that road connecting to the Wintergreen community and the amount of traffic that goes on there, and poor communication with the management company over there. One big focal point of the conversation was extending the notice for anything in the town of Keystone, right? So there was events that were, or things that were happening where notice they felt wasn't extended far enough to the local property owners. And so they wanted to ask that we could review our notice procedure for that. And then,
what are they asking?
Extended notice, so just like a wider berth instead of X number of feet being a larger.
Like for land
For
use
what?
development applications?
Yeah, the specific one was for land use. But I think that Councilwoman Davis can share her story on that. But basically, do you want to talk about that at all or no?
What's this?
I think you shared the story that in the pond or in your HOA, you only got noticed because you were the HOA president, not because you lived there. And that was an example
Right.
that potentially we should be looking at extending that beyond the certain square foot marker that is currently there. There was also questions about the redevelopment and comp plan at Keystone, and so we told the folks that were there about the opportunities to get involved with the comp plan. One of the folks there believed that the STR hotline was not effective and utilized by a few people, so I think that we have an opportunity there to expand the use of that hotline. And then last but not least, one of the gentlemen there had participated in a quasi-judicial hearing for a land use matter and felt that the process could have been communicated a little bit more effective in the future. So they had wished the ability to submit all of their information that they talked about during their public comment, and so that way we didn't have to, or he didn't have to use his 3 minutes to talk about things that he could have submitted ahead of time, and that he could use the 3 minutes to potentially respond to other aspects of the comment that would be made as part of that process.
I'm confused because the process allows for public comment, written public comment before the hearing.
And that's what I was meaning about the communication. So maybe communicating that a little bit more effectively so that they can submit that ahead of time. Just giving the feedback that was given to us.
Sure.
And then my last item was the Razor Drive lights have been malfunctioning over the past couple of weeks. The town manager was made aware of that and contacted CDOT, so thank you very much for that. It still seems to be an ongoing issue. My concern with that is if they're always flashing 24/7, 365, not only are folks going to complain about the lights in their houses or businesses, but also might cause complacency and non-compliance with the lights when there actually is somebody in the crosswalk.
And we're doing all we can do, there's CDOT's lights, is keep calling them and getting them out here, which we keep doing.
Anything else? Councilmember Kirkle?
No, this is other matters, sorry.
No, not yet. All right. One report I have is we'll be heading over, the town manager and I will be meeting with Shannon Bueller tomorrow. And a couple approaches, topics with them is we want to start pushing them more for involvement in our, particularly coming up the Business Advisory Council, involvement in looking at the items that we as a council are considering for ordinances and resolutions, so we can ensure we at least consider their input as we go forward. We're also going to be talking to them about medians and some other minor things, and I'm going to ask Shannon tomorrow if they would be willing to develop their near and long-term priorities where they would like help from the town, and we'll similarly develop a list of priorities that we would like help from Vail Resorts on. And then it gives us an idea of focusing what their interests are, what our interests are, and hopefully we can look at accomplishing some. We probably won't accomplish them all. We may accomplish bits.
It will be valuable to find out where the overlap is.
Where the overlap is and where there isn't. And so that's a start of that'll be the start of a hopefully refocusing that meeting into more how we can better work together and support each other instead of the mountains really doing great. Forgive me, but it has to be a working session for us to understand each other. And that's a lot of that's based on what I heard at the CAST meeting and other private conversations. We'll also probably bring up Park City, the ski patrol strike, the feedback that we got at CAST, and discuss that the council, if it appears evident that we're going to get a strike, particularly during the ski season, that the council may very well consider some sort of public statement regarding that eventuality, because to us, the damage that a strike could do to this community at a very busy time is not only a near-term impact, but it certainly could impact us for years. So, any other? All right, Councilmember Sullivan.
Yeah, I just want to update on we got bumped from the U.S. Post Service Board of Governors meeting that was February, so we're now scheduled for May. I just don't trust, we're kind of a low priority thing, so I think it's time to list our heavy hitter support.
I've already been in discussion with Senator Hickenlooper's regional rep, as well as Congresswoman or Congressman Negus's regional rep, and I'd like your help, Dan, in putting together a letter for them of really an issue paper for them of why we need a zip code for Keystone, the town of Keystone. And they have both indicated that they would be willing to get the senator and the congressman to send something to the Board of Governors.
We want to shoot for the May 8th meeting.
May 8th, yeah. I've been telling them it's an April meeting, but May would be fine.
Following up on the copy, the next one's the 3rd. We need to decide, is that a evening or is that a morning? Who does it? Morning?
I think the context on the morning, I think, Dan, one of the days when you were not able to attend, we had discussed briefly the possibility of doing an evening one after the resort closes to capture more of those working force people.
So do morning.
Morning until the resort closes.
Okay, so March 3rd morning, and then we need,
Look at
I can do this one, but I
In
need,
April will probably be morning as well.
I'll need a person to come March 3rd. Any volunteers? You? Okay, got a volunteer. And then the last thing, I was at Northwest Cog and at early climate options, and I mean, beyond the normal things, there's lots of concern about funding because of what's going on in Washington and the trickle down. And the only reason I bring that up to us is that in both places the discussion was, well, where can we turn to other sources? And I'm a little nervous that other sources might include towns. So just to make sure, so there's probably, besides these, others, groups that will be pressed over the next month or two. So we just need to be very prudent how we represent our money.
That point was discussed at least the mayor manager's session, the concern about that. Most of the other towns are also very pressed on the budget side, and they're looking at that squeeze and saying, I don't know, and I think we're gonna have to keep our ears to the ground and basically operate in tandem with all the other, with the other towns through the managers' meetings and the mayor managers' meetings, and look at what they're doing as we make decisions whether to or not to support various activities. We could very easily, right now the sheriff is attempting to do a divide and conquer on, forgive me, and basically a divide and conquer on on his special teams to work on crisis, the crisis response guys, and the other towns are saying, wait a minute, we want to get our act together before we'll commit to, and we want him to get his act together before we even considering supporting it. That includes full disclosure of budget, which he hasn't been even forthful to the county commissioners on. So they've been struggling with that. So it'd be very easy for each town to say, yeah, maybe I'll do something, and then we'll get another request and another request. We have to be in concert with wherever we're going.
So if I heard you correctly, the sheriff might be looking to augment the smart team funding from the town.
Well, basically,
pushed.
yeah, he's been reduced in funding out of, I think, strong futures, and his grant funding is dropping off, and the county has been unwilling to plus up his budget because his budget has been increasing at a significant rate faster than the overall county budget. And so there's some real budgetary issues going on.
Yeah, and it's, the sheriff had asked the individual towns to come speak about the smart teams. And mayors, managers, commissioners, we discussed it, and it's not just the smart teams. It's the entirety of the sheriff's budget that needs to be discussed. Smart teams are a very lucrative, low-hanging fruit that it's hard for people to say no to unless you look at the entirety of the budget and say, well, you have this money here or this money there. So that's why the towns and the county commissioners are asking the sheriff to come to the mayor's, managers, commissioners first and have the decision.
You're gonna see it a lot of places.
It's going to come from all the nonprofits.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to deal with it as other towns are, and it'd be nice to know what everyone else is thinking about and doing as we frame what we want to do.
So that's all.
Councilmember Kerr.
Along the same lines of belt tightening, so the transit board is, Summit County Transit is recognizing the impact of no longer having the Keystone element of sales taxes flowing through them. That's probably happening everywhere.
Well, they still get the Keystone element of the property tax, which supports the Summit stage.
But there are,
Yeah.
if they're talking about big picture. And along those same lines, we met right after the federal grant freeze, and that morning it was unfrozen. So there's like a chill in the air with respect to making decisions about that have budgetary impact. I think we're all going to find out how much even of state funds flow through the state from the federal government. So just to one report from that meeting, you know, the Summit County has found their micro transit operator, VIA. It's an excellent one. It's got a lot of experience, and they're very responsive. But that's still on hold as to where they're going to do their pilot. The early idea was a bridge too far, so they're redesigning that. The reason I bring it up, I've been asked by someone if the van that they see in Summit Cove is that micro transit, and just to be clear, it is not. This year, Summit Stage added another, a van that goes back and forth between the Summit Cove bus stop on the Summit Stage and out to the Swan Mountain Village. So that's a big feather in their cap, but we shall see going out which money is from state, which is from federal, and which big plans we will not execute exactly as we planned.
The big issue in transit for Summit County is the new transit barn in Frisco that was funded. It's all federal, it's about $30 million worth of grant funding from the federal government, and it was justified based on electrification of the buses.
Right, that's all I have on that, thanks.
Is there anything else from council? All right, other business, Councilmember Kerr.
Yeah. I'd like to propose that we consider a policy for accepting cash contributions or in contributions in kind to the town. You'll recall when we were preparing for the Tabor ballot issue, we did a lot of research, we did a lot of educating and town halls, and mentioned the possibility of receiving private gifts or contributions. I mentioned it offhand to our attorney, and Ms. Madsen was kind enough to say that if we ask her to do so, she could look at a policy. Do I have some interest with myself in crafting a policy that just allows us to accept cash contributions? As we all know, the details might be a little dicey, but I think Ms. Madsen can lead us through. Do we want to put that on a future agenda?
I didn't know we couldn't.
Well, also, the question is, do you want to limit the policy to just cash contributions? I mean, people could,
In kind, yeah.
you could,
So make it
give,
complicated?
right, or also real property. I mean, it could include everything.
I think it should, I've dealt with this previously in a board I was a part of, is in-kind can get sloppy. An example we had was a sailboat was donated to us. And there's a lot of, at least in Connecticut, there's a lot of legal aspects to that. So I think when this is developed, we should look at where that.
Not to step on Ms. Madsen's toes, but I think that policy would clarify that we decide whether we accept it or not.
Perfect.
Interesting.
I agree, we need this. Again, you've heard me caution before, there's a number of issues that have to be addressed very much in the near term that's going to require Ms. Madsen's work, particularly in dealing with land, Summit County land that is in the town of Keystone, and working with the county to try to get that transferred to the town of Keystone ownership. We have issues required by the transition IGA. There's a couple of requirements in there for agreements that we haven't started working on, that she needs to work on that in the next couple of months. So if it's all right with council, what I'd like them to do is, what staff to do is come up and look at what is on our town attorney's plate and the town staff's plate, and be ready to give us their priority list of what needs to be worked on, what they have bandwidth to work on when.
Question, is there anything imminent?
I was hoping there might be, but I don't know.
We
Talked about it.
Did you actually have someone that?
No, you said that group had offered a project, and a project might be to contribute.
Oh, no, what the National Brotherhood offered was they wanted to know if there was some place that they could, some nonprofit that they could work with, people could donate time to when they're here at Keystone. So that wouldn't be a town issue, that was a work with the nonprofit. That's what they.
Valid, but we can look for opportunities like that.
Yeah.
So is it pressing? No, but if
No,
Ms. Madsen, you put it on the agenda and we all agree, we would like to see that sometime in the next few months.
I'd say in the next half year. I don't know right now the workload that Ms. Madsen is going to have to do, and we're going to have to prioritize at that offsite what we want to get accomplished this year. And that's one of the reasons for the offsite.
We'll put that on the list and figure out
Where it goes.
where it goes. We might need it before we accept the property from Summit County even.
council.
Yeah, and if we can do it sooner, I'd like to do it sooner. But I also don't want to slow down the other key items.
Last comment. I've seen potholes being filled, and I want to thank someone, town staff in general, for making that happen. I didn't think it would happen in the winter. It's pretty effective. Pretty awesome.
They'll probably all be blown out in a couple of days. But
Sure.
Any other items? Councilmember Cormet?
Speaking of other priorities, I know I've been a bit of a broken record on this, but it is an absolute key thing to our natural beauty and health of community. And I noticed several recent articles in the paper on this subject too. You might have figured out that I'm about to talk about dark skies, because there are two other communities that are on the path to passing some ordinances around that and becoming dark sky certified. And they're ahead of us. How'd they get ahead of us? Well, because we're busy starting a town and getting all of the important things we need to
And one
run.
of them had already been doing it before we were formed.
True, but we shouldn't be left too far behind. I think it's really important that we work on this.
On that,
I concur.
do you think we might be able to ask Vail Resorts when we go to that meeting why lights are kept on the mountain until 11 o'clock most nights?
Depends whether the night's skiing or not. But
it has to do with
It's
snowmaking.
not nice.
It used to be tied, and I don't know if it still is, to snowmaking because the electrical systems were intertwined. And it was a huge cost.
But we could
to
ask.
combine.
Yes, I would, yeah.
Realize.
Given that Vail Resorts has a green commitment that untie many kilowatts per hour of lighting that are tied into some other system, seems like something that could both save them money, be good for the environment and good for the community.
Because I remember the last time it was discussed, it was several $1 million to make the change. And that's the problem. But I think part of that change has been made already in the paymaster area and others. Yeah, it's worth the discussion.
Yeah, I think it's, I've watched it out my window year after year, and like there were years where they were just leaving all the lights on every night, 24/7, when they weren't snowmaking and there was no night skiing, and then there were seasons where promptly every night it was out at 8 o'clock. And then this season, it's like, this part of the mountains, we're just gonna leave those lights on. So I'm questioning, sometimes I think that there's responses that are given that are truthy, but when they're dug into, the details reveal that explanation might not be so.
We can make the request.
Yeah, it bothers me because I see the lights on and I think, oh, it's night skiing, I gotta go do it tonight. And then go to the webpage and find out, oh, no, they don't have anywhere near the night skiing schedule they used to.
At least you go to the webpage first. Not to the mountain.
Are there any other business? All right, the next item is adjournment, and can I have a motion to adjourn?
So much.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, sure, well, is there any detailed discussion we can go into? All those in motion of adjourning? Aye. Opposed, we're adjourned.